Hey everyone, Romeo here, a fellow Spanish language learner. In this video, I want to discuss something that you probably thought about before. I think we know more Spanish than we think we know. And I don't mean that in a motivational way. I mean that structurally. Here's what I've noticed. Sometimes I'll watch a YouTube video in Spanish, or I'll listen to a short segment of Spanish news. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realize, wait, I understood almost all of that. You see, many times words come up that I wouldn't necessarily choose myself, or phrases appear that I don't actively use. But in context, I understand them. Not perfectly every time, not instantly every time, but I recognize them. And that realization almost always still catches me off guard. Because if you asked me before pressing play how much Spanish do you actually know, I probably would have underestimated it. But once the context unfolds, the comprehension is there. And that matters. Because here's the key. We don't recognize what we've never learned. If we truly didn't know what we thought we didn't know in Spanish, those videos would sound like noise. The fact that they don't sound like noise anymore means something has been stored. The structure is there. The vocabulary is there. The patterns are familiar, even if we can't immediately produce them ourselves. I think this is where we misjudge our progress. We tend to measure our ability based on what we can instantly say. But language isn't just production. There's recognition, and then there's recall. Recognition is understanding something when we hear it or read it. Recall is having the ability to pull it out ourselves under pressure. They both rely on the same stored knowledge, but recall just requires a bit more stress. So back to recognition. When we can watch a Spanish video and recognize almost everything being said, that's not small. That's evidence. Evidence that exposure worked. Evidence that repetition stuck. Evidence that structure has been absorbed. A lot of us overlook that. We'll understand 80 or 90% of something, and instead of being encouraged, we focus on the 10% that we missed. Or we focus on the fact that we couldn't say those same sentences ourselves. But the ability to recognize them at full speed means the knowledge exists. It's dormant, not absent. And this is true for most of us. We may not actively use certain words when we speak, but when those words show up in context, we understand them. That means our brain categorized them somewhere. Unfortunately, we don't have a visible list of the words that we know. Think about English for a second. There are probably thousands of words that we know in English that we almost never say. Legal terms, medical vocabulary, technical words, specific adjectives. We might fully understand them when we hear them, but unless we're in a courtroom, a hospital, or a very specific conversation, we're never going to use them. It just means the situation hasn't required them. And we don't walk around mentally reviewing every English word that we know. We don't have a running internal catalog. Those words sit dormant until context calls for them, and then they appear instantly. Spanish kind of works the same way when you think about it. There are structures and words sitting in our heads that we may not actively use, but when the right context appears, a video, a conversation, a news segment, they all light up. Recognition is proof that they were stored. We just haven't needed to produce them yet. But what we can say is language lives in patterns, and patterns reveal themselves when something triggers them. When I now notice that I understand more than I expected to, it changes how I interpret progress. It tells me that the work that I did didn't disappear. The chapters that we read, the drills that we did, the repetition that felt slow, it all accumulated. It just doesn't announce itself. There's a sequence to this. Recognition develops first, recall develops second, speed develops last. If recognition is strong enough that we can comfortably follow a video or a news segment, that's not the beginning stage anymore. That's stored competence. The only reason why it doesn't come out as quickly when we speak is because recall hasn't been trained as deliberately. And recall is trainable. Speed is trainable. And retrieval strength is trainable. But none of that happens unless recognition is already there. And if we're recognizing most of what we hear, then recognition is already there. So instead of saying there's so much Spanish that I don't know right now, maybe we should say, I understand more than I can produce right now. That's more accurate. It acknowledges the gap, but it also acknowledges the progress. Because understanding means the structure exists. It just needs more use, more repetition, and more situations that require us to pull it out. We know way more Spanish than we may think. Not because we're imagining it, but because recognition proves storage. And storage is the hard part. Turning storage into faster recall is simply the next phase of training. Anyway, if this reframes how you see your own progress, go ahead and give this video a like. It helps the channel and lets me know that these conversations are useful. And of course, until the next video, good luck on building more usable, functional Spanish. Peace.